Badagry. For many people, it is remembered as one of the major slave ports of West Africa, a place of sorrow, a place of memory, a place where countless Africans passed through the point of no return. But among many other people, there is another story connected to Badagry. A story of migration, a story of war, a story of language, identity, and survival. Today, we explore one of the most fascinating cultural questions in West African history. Is Badagry Ewe? To understand Badagry, we must first understand the peoples of this coastline. Long before colonial borders divided West Africa, communities speaking related languages occupied large stretches of land across present-day Ghana, Togo, Benin, and Nigeria. Linguists today classify many of these languages under what is called the Gbe language family. Among these groups are the Ewe, Fon, Aja, and Ogu peoples. Though modern borders now separate them into different countries, many of these communities still share similarities in language, names, religion, customs, and oral tradition. But Badagry sits near the border between Nigeria and Benin, right at the crossroads of this larger Gbe cultural world. Ewe oral tradition speaks of long migrations undertaken by Ewe ancestors after leaving Hogbe. These migration stories are central to Ewe identity and are remembered across many Ewe communities today. One particularly fascinating oral tradition connects these migration journeys to the area now associated with Badagry. According to some Ewe historical narratives, the migrating Ewes encountered a warrior group led by a figure known as Doakli near the present-day Nigeria-Benin border. A conflict is said to have taken place there around the middle of the 16th century. In these accounts, the Ewes emerged victorious in what became remembered as one of their most important early military victories during the migration period. Oral tradition further claims that this victory was later celebrated through dance, song, and dramatic performance. Atrikwi, for example. Some storytellers explain that certain movements in these performances symbolically reenacted the capture and defeat of their enemies. According to some other oral interpretations, the name Badagry may derive from the expression Gberefu. Roughly translated, this means the place where warriors were defeated. Some versions go further, rendering it as Anago Badagry, the place where Yoruba warriors were defeated. Centuries later, the rise of the Kingdom of Dahomey would once again reshape this region. Through warfare, conquest, and slave raids, populations across the coast were displaced and scattered. Communities migrated westward and eastward seeking safety. These movements further deepened the mixing of cultures and peoples along the coastline. Oral traditions among some urban communities still connect Badagry and nearby regions to these periods of conflict and migration. Perhaps the strongest evidence of connection lies not only in oral tradition, but also in language and identity. Many people outside Nigeria are surprised to learn that there are indigenous Ewe-speaking communities in Nigeria itself. In and around Badagry, Ewe-speaking communities have lived for centuries and are considered bona fide Nigerians, not recent migrants or foreigners. In fact, within the Badagry area, three major ethnic identities are often recognized: the Ogun, the Awari, and the Ewe. These Nigerian urban communities are distinct from the Ogun, though both belong to the wider Gbe cultural world. Even more fascinating is the fact that the Ewe spoken by many of these communities is extremely close and sometimes virtually identical to Anglo Ewe spoken in parts of Ghana. To many Nigerians unfamiliar with this history, hearing Ewe spoken in Badagry can be surprising, leading some to mistakenly assume the speakers are Ghanaian immigrants. But the story becomes even more interesting when we look beyond the Ewe communities themselves. Another major ethnic group in the Badagry region is the Ogun people. Though the Ogun are distinct from the Ewe, both groups belong to the wider Gbe linguistic family, and traces of that shared ancestry still survive in remarkable ways today. Listen closely to some of these names and their meanings. In Ogun, you hear Sesi, meaning in the hands of God. In Ewe, the same idea appears, Sesi. Then there is Setonji in Ogun, meaning God prevails. In Ewe, this closely resembles Seduji. And then Sewanu, God has done well. In Ewe, Sewonu. These are not merely similar sounds. In many cases, even the meanings remain almost identical, and the similarities do not end with names. Even the numbers themselves reveal striking linguistic connections. The similarities extend to everyday vocabulary. Words for parts of the body are often closely related across the two languages.
Ata, nku, eto, ngoti.
These are not isolated coincidences. Though modern borders now separate these peoples, the languages still preserve echoes of a much older, interconnected world. But Badagry's story is not only about migration and language. It is also tied to one of the darkest chapters in human history. Thousands of Africans passed through this coastline during the Transatlantic slave trade. Families were separated, communities were shattered, entire futures disappeared into the Atlantic. The same coastline that offered refuge to some became a point of no return for many others. Today, the memory of that tragedy still lingers in Badagry's monuments, stories, and silence. So, is Badagry Ewe? The answer is not simple. History rarely is. But through oral tradition, migration stories, language, names, and living communities, traces of an Ewe connection continue to echo through the history of Badagry. Perhaps names remember what history forgets. And perhaps somewhere within Badagry lies the memory of journeys, struggles, and identities that still shape West Africa today. This has been Ewe Demystified. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you enjoyed this documentary. Miagadogo.